Brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network. Found exclusively at wrestlingwithjohners.com. Hello, we are live again for another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 251, and if you didn't catch our milestone episode last week with Casey, the Mother of Chaos, go back and check that out in the archive. But today, this week, episode 251, we've got none other than Benjamin Harland, the sweet prince Benjamin Harland, Jack Knudsen. We got one of the best up-and-coming young tag teams in the whole of the UK, Act 2. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the Wrestling with Johners podcast. How are you both doing?
Hello, thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're doing great. It's very good. Recovered from a very long weekend, so yeah,
we will get into that. We will get into that. But as you can see, running along the bottom of the screen, we are open to questions. If you've got any questions for Jack and Ben, Act 2. Ping them through to us now on your chosen device, and we'll do our very best to bring them up on screen and answer them all during this live broadcast. But first of all, you did mention it there, a bit of a prelude, but we saw each other quite a bit last weekend. Friday at Wet Cake over in Bedfordshire, which was a crazy show, which we'll talk about in a minute. You guys were busy on the road again with Kingsley Saturday, and I think performing Saturday. And then, of course, we saw each other again at Wrestle Carnival in Coventry, which was another incredible show. But you two must be sick of the sight of each other, seeing each other so much Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But it was a great weekend, wasn't it? Tell us about your experience just very briefly with them 3 days.
It's nice to get weekenders back. I think is something like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday is a gem of a wrestling weekend for us. We didn't get home at any point. It's sort of living out of a suitcase for 3 days, but it's really cool. We love it. Wet Cake was one of the most ridiculous shows I think either of us have been part of, in good ways, in all the good ways. I'm not even sure how to describe it. I saw a photo earlier where me and Jack are each holding Stone Cold ET's fingers. And there's emotion coming from Stone Cold ET, even though his face is completely blank. I was just like, how do you explain this to somebody?
Well, this is it. Stone Cold ET, he had his head twisted at one point. It was a crazy night. But I mean, let's touch on your match from Friday night. Then it was this one here, wasn't it? And it was the BOWL-A-RAMA seminar. I didn't catch the first bit of it because I was backstage. But it was yourself. There was Hustle. There was Cara. There was BOWL-A-RAMA, of course. Guys, starting with Jack. What was that? What was that match all about? Because it just looked craziness from beginning to end.
Yeah, that's probably as good as you've pinned it there. I was in it, and I still don't really know what's happened. I've watched it back from 2 different camera angles, and I'm still not certain how just us won a seminar. Not even sure how one wins a seminar.
Yeah,
or how we got a passing of the. It was very, very weird. Is sort of the best way to put it. It's easily, we had a lovely moment at the end, obviously, the return of Elijah and Big, all the crazy stuff going on.
His very long absence. About an hour and a half.
But yeah, we were all just sort of stood in the ring, and I tapped Hustle Malone, and I was like, this is the most fun I've ever had. It was so wild, and I caught myself 5-6 times whilst in the ring or around the ring, just in floods of laughter, trying to pretend that I wasn't. It was just so ridiculous, the whole thing.
Yeah. What about yourself, Ben?
You'd absolutely be able to catch us. Should the footage of Wet Cake pop out, you'll be able to see us, especially towards the end of the show. Just sort of turn to each other on the apron, doing this, try not to show anybody that you're laughing. I think Kai Payne coming out to do a run in on a match that he was in was amazing. And honestly, it was a blast. We had no idea sort of how the concept would go, especially running a seminar in front of fans, because there's going to be lots of like little niche humor in there, that maybe wouldn't translate to somebody who hadn't been to a wrestling training session or anything like that. But luckily, the fans ate it up. They were completely on board the whole night, to be fair.
Yeah, that's right. They were bowling balls and all sorts of madness.
Yes, but, they were all over it. And I learned yesterday that was Cara's last match.
No way.
Cara put out a little thing on Twitter saying that she's stepping back and that was her last match. So
for the foreseeable anyway, which what a match. What a match to be.
Yeah, it's quite the match to go out on. So
the story, isn't it?
But when I first heard about Wet Cake Pro, I thought it was a rib, to be honest with you. I didn't think it was a real company, but it is. It's kind of like Sacrifice Pros, kind of little stepchild, and it's another charity promotion run by Hustle, of course. But like I say, at the end we had Bridge, the Wet Cake Pro champion, retain. At least I think it retained. I think it was an it, but that was probably one of the highlights of the night. And of course, the pop that Stone Cold ET got as he came out at the end to save the day was fantastic. But moving on from Wet Cake, and like I say, if there is highlights out there, or if it does get released, I definitely urge anybody to go and check that out. It's definitely unlike any wrestling show you've ever seen before. And then, of course, guys, I saw you on Sunday at Wrestle Carnival in Coventry, another tremendous show, an absolutely stacked card with not just the best wrestlers from the UK, but Europe and the world, dare I say it. But Ben, I just want to kind of, this was a message you put up on your Facebook page, I think, saying that you got to see Scotty 2 Hotty do the worm the Too Cool dance live and in person today, year made. Obviously a highlight for you guys. You were on the sidelines. You were there, obviously, part of the ring crew with Kingsley, but hell of a day for you two, hell of a moment, lots of moments, lots of highlights, but that was a pretty cool evening, especially if you're a fan of Scotty 2 Hotty.
100%. Like we've both sort of had quite a lot of those pinch me moments recently, to be fair, like in a row, and it's really cool to have. We were sort of almost speechless when we realized what was happening. He was going to do the dance, he was going to do the worm. We were sort of there at the back of the room like, oh my god, he's going to do it. Like to be able to sit back and be a fan again for stuff like that is so much fun. I say fan again, fans like been fans forever, of course, but to be able to be there for things like that, like stuff that sort of when we were a kid, you don't really imagine that you'll see, especially in England. Like, I was speaking yesterday, and it's something I've spoken to Jack about before, where like when you're a kid, you sort of have to think you have to magic yourself to America for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So to be able to sort of see guys like Scotty 2 Hotty and Eric Young wrestling in person and wrestling some of the best in the UK as well it's surreal. But it's a lot of fun.
100%. And yourself, Jack, I mean, like I say, talent from top to bottom, that card was stacked. And was there a part of you thought, I'd love to be in there, I'd love to kind of mix it up with these guys?
Oh, 100%. We've been lucky enough to sort of surround ourselves with some of those guys, and obviously it'd be great to get in there a bit more with them. Obviously, I'm very much inclined to that pure stuff. That match was crazy. But just the whole show in general was, as Ben said, to see guys that you just imagine you'll maybe see if you ever go to America, to be doing it right in front of you. And like, I'd hate to see the video of when he said about what they were gonna do, and me and him start grabbing each other and freaking out, because we're the biggest fans. I think a lot of wrestlers try to, oh no, I'm too cool, huh? To be too cool to be a wrestling fan now, and I'm gonna pretend that I'm stone faced and hate it, and I'm just here to wrestle and go home, everyone's a fan of it. The wrestlers are bigger fans than the people in the seats because they've taken it even further.
Yeah.
So but I don't think either of us have ever felt inclined to be like, oh, we'll hide that this is dead cool. He was doing the worm. We were going crazy.
You're going to mark out, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
It's going to happen. So one of the questions that came through before we went live, as a matter of fact, from Richie Harrigan, I think his name is pronounced, via YouTube. Who came up with the name Act 2? Now, this isn't a question I was going to ask a bit later on, but we'll bring Richie's question up. Who did come up with the name Act 2, and what does it mean exactly?
It was you.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really.
I think,
come up with, great question, Richie.
Yeah, it's very good. So
what with it? Like, it was. We were trying to be everything for a bit. We were like, okay, we're in a transition where we were no longer the team that we were previously. We were a stable called AWOL, and we're like, okay, well, what's next for us? That stable's finished. Post lockdown, we're coming back. We're trying to do something different, and which, of course, Act 2 works really good for. So you'd think that was like the spark that collected, but it wasn't.
It really is. That's sort of really smart. It wasn't that.
Yeah, it wasn't really smart.
It really wasn't.
It was just awful, like the most generic names and just stuff that I'd never get over.
There was a time where we were both looking through our liked Spotify playlists, and we're like, can we just mash something together from this? Yeah. Like there was so many sort of methods we went through to try and find a name.
Just something. I said that something was the second act, like in a film or even in a match. Oh, they've got to the second act of this match, and then I think it just sort of stemmed from there. But it wasn't this big, like, light bulb moment. There it is. Will be Act 2. Even for a bit, we were like, I'm not sure. Will be something else. But we had to stick to something, stuck to it, and now I think sort of it's like when you get a bit of a stupid tattoo where it doesn't mean anything at the time, but then afterwards, it ends up meaning something to you. We just sort of like, we'll be Act 2, and then we put all this meaning into it afterwards.
But it's short, it's punchy, and you know it works. And I think it's getting you noticed. I'm going to bring up some pictures now, guys. Look at that. Sacrifice Pro, Saints of Sacrifice. Their tag team, and so bring up one more picture, and then the real thing. Hold it up, Jack. Come on. There we go. Look at that beautiful bout. But congratulations. Now, I was there when you won the titles, and you won a number one contenders match earlier on against Los Palominos, wasn't it? At the Sacrifice Pros 5th anniversary show, and you cashed in your number one contenders slot or prize on the 8-7. They just won their match, I believe. And kind of like you sneaked in there, you cashed in, you became the new Saints of Sacrifice. But a pretty big accomplishment. Like I say, Sacrifice Pro, a pretty cool charity promotion out of the Bedfordshire area. But tell us kind of how it feels coming out of that to be crowned their tag team champions.
Honestly, it was one of those things where you don't believe it until it happens. Yeah. So, not to give away too much, I suppose, but it was something we were quite sort of surprised by as well. We only debuted for Sacrifice in January.
Yeah.
And they've been nothing but great to us. In all honesty, we've been very lucky with the stuff we've been able to do there already, and it's only July. So to be trusted as the top of a tag division after we've, spent so long trying to get there in other places, and such a talented tag division at that as well. It was a very. I feel like I'm gonna keep using surreal. But it's a very surreal thing to be that, like, the guys as far as tag teams go in a company, like, to be trusted with that and run with that is something I'd always wish for, but not anything I ever imagined would happen, to be honest. So,
and Jack, your feelings?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously you were pretty much the first person we saw when we came back. And we were still sort of, you're so wrapped up in it, but it wasn't until sort of the drive back that me and Ben were sat there and we were like, oh, okay. Like, you think you've worked really hard up until this point, but now we've got to work 10 times harder in such a talented tag division to be like, oh no, we're the guys, we're the people who you're looking at when, like, just last weekend being in there with BOWL-A-RAMA, like, it's crazy, and we're supposed to be the tag team, so we've got to step up to it. I think for a long time, me and Ben were told sort of, oh, you guys are doing so much and it's finally paying off. And up until sort of the Saki tag belts, we were like, people keep saying this to us, but where is this paying off? Where is this us seeing something? And I think it was a very nice moment that we both shared of, okay, we can see something now. There is something there for the work that we're putting into it.
Yeah, 100%. And we're going to talk more about your journey and kind of your journey as tag team act 2. But like I say, traveling up and down the country, in the ring van with Kingsley and with Grant, you must kind of learn a lot from them too. And I believe Kingsley is probably the more experienced of the two. But like I say, do you see them as mentors, and do you use that opportunity to kind of pick the brains and to kind of I don't know, spitball ideas, throw things at the wall, see what sticks? What are them kind of van journeys like, and do you use it as a learning experience?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. To be fair, it's never the four of us in the van at the same time because four of us can't fit. But
oh, I think Ben's frozen. Jack, do you want to carry on?
Yeah. Yeah, being in the van is obviously we're so intimate in there. It's a very small van in the front of us. Getting the three of us in is challenging, especially when Kingsley's such a jack guy. So us being squeezed in with him. But yeah, we sit under the learning tree all the time. I told Kingsley at the end of this weekend, obviously at the end of wrestling weekend, sort of,
yes,
the real calm after the storm, especially that sort of ring job we did at Carnival was awful up those escalators. Hell of a job. Yeah, that was the worst ring job I've ever done. But
easily.
But I was doing it with two of my closest mates in wrestling. And Kingsley's so giving with us. He helps us out more than we could repay him for. We had a chat about it, how it was. We have had a lot of people, and we've been very lucky to have a lot of people sort of, for no reason, we've done nothing for them. We've given them nothing. Just be like, okay, I'll put stock in you and I'll care about you guys and look after you guys. But the amount of light bulb sort of moments that Kingsley gives me of being like, oh, why don't you do this? Why do you do this? We had a match at Future, and he said to me after the match, and this is the first time me and Kingsley wrestled together, and I've wrestled him a lot more since then. But, from the first time we worked, he said, and at the time I was very much more into the sort of flying stuff where I've kind of tried to move a little bit more technical and still putting a bit of the flying in. But at the time I was very set on being a high flyer, and this is no slight on like being a camps wrestler because it's very important in British wrestling. But I was asking Kingsley what he could give me about the match. He was like, you need to stop doing this real two opposite styles. You can't be trying to be dead campy wrestler and super indie high flyer. He was like, either find like a midpoint or pick one. And from doing that, it completely changed the way I wrestle. And I think every time I get to work with Kingsley, I come out of it completely different and knowing more about myself and about a match and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. Ben, I think we lost you for a second there, but any thoughts on Kingsley as a mentor and kind of the people that you encounter that give you their kind of knowledge and experience and are there at a drop of a hat for that sort of advice?
Oh, absolutely. In a similar vein to what Jack just said, working with Kingsley was one of sort of the first people I had a conversation with where I was like, I feel a bit sort of lost in my style and what I want to present and things like that. And he was one of the people who really pushed for me to just wrestle how I want to wrestle. I think I was definitely trying to sort of put myself in a specific box that I didn't really fit in. And he was like, "Well, just what did you used to do? Like, what did you do that worked to get you to this point? Like, why are you changing that now? Why don't you just sort of develop on what you have and sort of wrestle in the way you'd enjoy watching wrestling?" And it's conversations like that sort of they happen in the van or in a house or something after the show, but they're so pivotal to both of our careers, really. And to have guys like Kingsley and Diamond Dave Andrews as well is someone else I've had this chat with. We've both been able to work with him, where they sort of really instill the confidence in yourself, which is so important to have.
Yeah. Brilliant. Guys, I'm fascinated to know, how long have you two known each other for? Do you know each other? Does your kind of friendship precede wrestling or wrestling training? When did you first kind of come across each other as friends?
We met at wrestling training. You've trained a little bit longer than I have, so I sort of rocked up and was awfully shy and didn't say boo to anybody. And yeah, I guess you seem to have more of a sort of memory of that time period, but
yeah, it was.
You tell the story better than me.
I've got an awful memory, sort of pre-wrestling. But I can my memory post wrestling is pretty good.
Like afterwards, it's great. Yeah, same.
Anything I did before wasn't really. I just lived for 14 years, and then I was like, okay, I'll start doing stuff. But yeah, I was maybe just under a year in, or roughly about a year in. We still didn't have a ring at the barracks at this point. We were just sort of wrestling on mats and stuff.
Yes.
And I remember meeting Ben, and the class was pretty big at this time. Like, it wasn't really. It wasn't really like a few guys. Like, whereas me and Ben will happily go and train on our own now. That wasn't really the sort of the norm at the time. It was only you'd wrestle at the sessions, you'd train at the sessions. It'd be
and then that was it.
2-3 hours, and then that'd be it for your week. And wrestling once a week now seems completely weird, but at the time it was what we did. And yeah, I met Ben, and again, it doesn't do much for us as a tag team. But when we met, we didn't really hit it off. We didn't instantly become really good mates. He was just sort of a presence there for a bit. We didn't chat or anything. He was very shy. I was still very shy at the time. So we were both sort of just there to wrestle. We weren't really interested in joking around with the class and being funny and stuff. We just sort of got in and got out, which was all we really wanted from wrestling. We just wanted to learn to wrestle. Whereas I think now, in maturing and being more confident in yourself and stuff, you can have a laugh and you can have fun and get on with people, as well as doing the wrestling bit and taking that quite seriously and important. But yeah, it wasn't really we didn't get on wildly until we had a match in training, and again, this was no ring, just on mats. We just really clicked in the putting together of the match. It just seemed dead easy, and this was a point where we both maybe had 4 moves each, so it should have been easy. But for those training matches, that can be real pulling teeth of how are we going to do this, with the caveat of, okay, you don't have ropes, you don't have turnbuckles,
you definitely don't have a comfortable bump.
You don't have a comfortable bump. Like, we could do that now. You could figure that out now, but you've got all these caveats on a match, and then you've got to have a match that's good enough to pass. And this is your opportunity to show the coach, oh, I can be on shows. So there's a lot of sort of riding on these training matches. And yeah, it just sort of hit off, and we had a decent little match for what it was at the time. And I think from there, we just became better and better mates until suddenly we're training all the time together, and then we're on shows together, and then we pitch to work each other all the time. So we want to be wrestling each other. And then, it just got a natural evolution to now where we're pretty much inseparable. You can't can't really get one of us without the other.
So what was the situation that kind of led to you two teaming then? I'm guessing there was a space on a card, they wanted a tag team, and then they threw you two together. So, I mean, obviously you'd built a little bit of a connection, a relationship during that time, training and working one another in singles. But what was the situation that led to you actually tagging?
So we were initially a trio. It was the two of us and Andre Delano. And at the time, we were all sort of a little bit frustrated, which happens sometimes. You sort of, you know, there's things going on. We're sort of frustrated. We're like, oh, we want to, you know, we want to learn more. We want to go and progress. We want to. So the three of us sort of formed AWOL at the time. Out of that, we were like, well, we want to be able to prove that we can go out and, you know, we can go and improve on these like other shows and in these other sort of scenarios. So it pretty much came from that, because marketing ourselves as a trio, we were sort of like, well, if you need a 6-man tag, you've got one. If you need a tag in a singles, you've got one. You need 3 singles, you've got a singles, a manager, and someone else. Like, we were just sort of 3 hands to hand shows at the time. Yeah. And so we were like, yeah, 100% we did for the first, and we still do it now. Like, you never sort of, I don't believe you're ever above doing anything like this, especially not us. But we'd go and we just sort of like, whatever you need. You know, you've got 3 people who we've been cameramen, we've been like plant fans, we've been music people. There was a weekend where we did every job in wrestling except wrestle. Because you know, we were just like, especially that sort of mid to late 2019, which is when we really started showing our faces to people. That was when, you know, I think we got to sort of, in the sense of us two as a team, you know, you spend that much time with someone, you get to know them a lot better, and not just in a wrestling context. Like now, like, you know, my family buys Jack Christmas presents at Christmas, you know, and we sort of interact with each other's friends outside of wrestling and stuff. So, you know, it was situations like that where we'd go out and we just had the same vision of what we wanted to do, that sort of helped us bond in the ring and out of the ring. To be fair. And then obviously lockdown happens. Andre Delano decides not for him, he's not wrestling anymore. So that's when we sort of start presenting as just a concrete tag team. And I guess here we are.
100%. Yeah. 100%. We're going to talk about the many groups that you've had the opportunity to perform with, and you've really branched out over the last 12 months, certainly since wrestling came back last summer. But I want to talk to you about your own individual personas. I'm quite intrigued, and I'm still learning about you guys, and I know a lot of people watching this might want to know more about the individual elements within Act 2. But Ben, I think you call yourself Sweet Prince Benjamin Harland.
Yes.
And then we got kind of a little bit of a kind of a Mancunian frontman going on there with Jack Knudsen. Tell us a bit about where these personas come from, where the names come from, and me. Like I say, born several decades ago. I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, but loved Oasis. I was a huge Oasis fan in the 90s. So you've got me sold with that gimmick. But tell us a bit about your own individual personas, starting with Ben.
To be fair, I'll be completely honest, it's something I'm still developing on. I had 1,000,001 different ideas before I debuted, and then I debuted and that idea was wrong as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that I had to sort of naturally progress towards. I've done things previously, sort of character-wise and things that, you know, everything's worth a try, but it just didn't really work for me. There've been so many conversations about like being a specific thing, and being like, this is how I'd describe my character, because in some circles that's something that people really want, and they're like, you need to be able to sort of describe in a few words what you are.
Yeah.
Whereas in other circles, there's more. It's more about the nuance and sort of rather than being a gimmick, you're a character. I think, and I'd like to say, to be honest, it's quite cliche, but it's just really me, but very exaggerated. I think like the presentation and stuff is something I'm big on. Like, I always, when I got into wrestling as a kid, the first thing you'd see is how they look, right? And what they're wearing and sort of the presence they give off. So a big thing for me, especially now, is I want to be the wrestler that 10-year-old me would have sat in the crowd and gone, oh, he looks really cool. So I guess that's what I'm trying to present. I really want to sort of find myself within wrestling, and I don't think anyone's ever 100% there. I think everyone's constantly evolving and things like that. But especially more recently, I've got more comfortable in not knowing and more comfortable in experimenting in who Benjamin Harland is, I guess.
Yeah. Brilliant. Jack, tell us about this fella here then. I think you've probably evolved a little bit beyond this slightly, but is there still elements of this to your game nowadays, and where did this come from?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm gonna butcher the metaphor. And again, Kingsley knew what it was called the other day, but it's that ship where you keep changing the parts, and eventually it's not the same ship. But it looks.
I know that from Only Fools and Horses. Triggers broom.
Yeah, so it keeps changing the handle. It keeps changing.
Is that different heads and handles? Well, it's not the same broom, then, is it? Yeah, it is. Yes.
So we're sort of always triggers broom, if you will. Yeah, I've moved a little bit past that. But then there's still times where I have to bring out a little bit more of that side of stuff. I think there's no shame in me saying when I debuted, I was just Liam Gallagher in wrestling trunks. I did the walk and everything, and then you've got to realize that that's already a character that exists, and for as long as I am just Liam Gallagher, you're just a parody of someone who there already is, right? But I think if you take enough, and it's massively based on that kind of music and that sort of style of indie music, whether it's them or Cortinas or Arctic Monkeys or all these bands that I sort of like and grew up liking. You can take a little bit from all of those frontmen, and I think I was listening literally today to a podcast with Chris Jericho on True Geordie's podcast, and he was saying how you can dress up, like 10 people can dress up as Chris Jericho on Halloween, and they can all dress up as someone different. And I think that ever sort of evolving thing, he said the same thing about how like people could dress up as David Bowie and you could have 6 different costumes, but who it was. I think that's sort of what I want to do. I want to keep evolving more and more because I did get away from just being Liam Gallagher. But then I think for a bit, you couldn't really throw a stone in British wrestling without having some guy who's kind of a bit Oasis-y or kind of a bit Arctic Monkeys or a bit Cortinas or a bit that sort of indie vibe on the music and the way they carried themselves. But I think I've sort of, a lot like what Ben said, been able to adapt that to how I am just as a person and my personality. It's much easier to be a character when you're not really being a character. You're just being yourself with a few more frills on. And now I'm leaning more into the indie wrestler stuff that I'm doing. So indie, Spotlight the music, and then wrestler, so I can kind of sort of adapt more and more and lean into that technical and pure wrestling that I've always enjoyed watching, but I've always thought with my size, people just want to see a certain thing. And that's another thing from learning from people like Gresham and learning from people like Ridgway and even like all these amazing people. But then being like, okay, and I think it was Flash Morgan Webster was like, you've got to be comfortable in silence because you're never going to be going hold for hold and the crowd's going to be on their feet, but it's an important bit, and that isn't everyone's wrestling. I'm not saying I'd go to a show that's completely kids and be like, here, have a cravat for 20 minutes and then a roll up. But I'd like to evolve more into the indie wrestling stuff and getting a lot more technical with my game, and it's something that I find very interesting to learn as a wrestler as well, but it's also something that if I want to do it as a wrestler, I have to do it as a character as well, because you can't really have a character that works for high flying and then suddenly he just does technical wrestling. So yeah, it's ever evolving.
Brilliant. And we've had Caitlin Scullen get in touch, watching via YouTube. What the Knudsen part of your name seems to be quite a unique name. Where did that come from? Where did you kind of grab that from? It kind of sounds maybe foreign or European, according to Caitlin. But where's the origins of the Knudsen part of your name?
It is foreign. It's Danish. And in hindsight, I should have picked something else, because the amount of times I am Knudsen as instead of Sen is
Hudson is my
I've been
Hudson.
everything right. But yeah, so again, to peel back the curtain, it's my middle name. So I did the lazy thing of just having that, but I thought it was different. I don't know any other Knudsens, but it comes from my dad's a very big fan of speedway, like the motorbike racing.
Gotcha.
And there was a speedway rider called Tommy Knudsen, who he like broke his back and had to have all this stuff done, and he was told he'd never ride speedway again. And then they took the metal work out and they were like, oh, you've healed really well, you might be able to have a go at speedway again. And he took that from like plottering around the track, and then within a few seasons he was world champion again. So that was like, for my dad, who isn't really a wrestling fan, that's his Super Cena moment, right? That's, oh, this guy came back. So that clearly had a big impact on his life for him to name me after it.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us about your chemistry in the ring, because like I love watching you guys work, because you're very smooth, got some great double team action. You don't mind taking some big bumps off of quite regularly bigger opponents. But when did that kind of chemistry and kind of bond and relationship in the ring really start to click between the two of you?
I think lots of it came from wrestling against each other, to be honest. There was a time period where we called it Sunday Club. We'd go down to our training facility early in the morning, and we'd stay there until very early the next morning on a Sunday, and we'd just wrestle. We'd just try what we want to try, and we'd spend 2 or 3 hours hammering in this one thing, and we'd be like, right, this is what we've set ourselves to do. We're not going to stop until we've got it. You know what I mean? And I think both of us sort of having that attitude led itself really well into being a tag team. And especially sort of when things started to pick up as a duo, we both went in with the mindset of, right, if we're going to be a tag team, we're going to be a real tag team. You know what I mean? We're going to present as a tag team, and you are going to think of us together in that way. So again, sharing that attitude lended itself into being able to come up with certain things we wanted to do as a team and pick up from other teams and sort of really study that aspect of wrestling that maybe we didn't know as much about beforehand. Because we'll both tell you that when we started, tag team wasn't in our vision. That's a completely honest statement. But from being in a tag team, especially for myself, it sort of made me fall in love with that style of wrestling. So to be honest, I think, at least personally, I know I want to honor that. And I know that when I'm watching tag teams or watching a tag team match, tag team wrestling, I think it's really obvious when somebody is a team, as opposed to they're just sort of two dudes who happen to tag with each other. So I think sort of a combination of all those things really handed itself to us being able to. Oh, I think we've lost Jack.
That's right. We'll be back. We'll be back.
That sort of lended itself to us being, who we are at the minute.
And I think just wait a few seconds, but here we go. And
no problem.
There we go.
Oh, hello.
Hello. So let me.
I don't know what happened there.
That's all right. That's all right. This is live, folks. But let me ask you about influences then. Do you have any kind of tag teams from the past or the present that have influenced your style or your mindset regarding tag team wrestling? Obviously, you're very passionate about being a proper cohesive unit. But are there any tag teams from past or present that you've modeled yourself on that have inspired you or influenced you in any way?
Jack, I'll let you go for that.
Go on, Jack.
I've just got back. I heard the end of it.
Oh no!
Yeah, my
tag teams that have maybe influenced or inspired you over the years, past or present, that maybe you've modelled your team on in any way, shape, or form. What would you say?
Oh, we're 100% definitely inspired by Motor City Machine Guns. I think anyone watching us can see that we've had a massive influence.
Probably tell.
Because I think between me and Ben, that's a very much a hot period of wrestling that we watch. That's what we, again, it's what you like. If we want to be those wrestlers that 10-year-old us would be like, oh my god, well, Motor City Machine Guns were the wrestlers that both of us at 10 years old were going, oh my god. So yeah, I am massively inspired by them. But I think there's such, I think similar to the time that me and Ben thought it, a lot of people thought it's not many tag teams. And then everyone just became a really good tag team. So there wasn't really an opportunity for us to come in and be like, oh, we'll be two singles guys and we'll kind of figure it out along the way. Like we are in a scene now that is very hot anyway. The British scene's on fire. And then it's even hotter in the tag division. You've got to think promotions getting in a tag team is harder because you've got to have two people, and that's two times of travel sometimes,
logistics,
two wages, and it's harder, right? So what makes us be the people that are brought in, and why don't you bring in these other 20 amazing tag teams around the country? So I think not in sort of a backhanded way, but like that's inspired us of like, okay, well, we've got to be good because everyone who's tag wrestling at the minute is good. Like there's very few teams that are thrown together and very few teams that are, we don't mind tagging with each other. Like I think to be a tag team in this country now, you've got to show up.
Yeah, when I spoke to Reese and Morgan a few weeks ago, they said exactly the same. And, you know, I mean, a tag team matches are essentially a gimmick match, and there's tends to only be maybe one or two tag matches on any one card. So you've got to really stand out, and you guys are definitely doing that. But I mean, Ben, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. But how do you see Act 2 kind of evolving over time? Do you have kind of plans or ideas on how you guys want to develop or move on to the next phase of Act 2?
I think to be at the moment, I think we're really sort of riding the wagon of what we have now. That doesn't mean we're not trying to evolve and trying to find out new things. It just means that it's taken us a while to sort of find this groove that we're in. So I think it's sort of very important to appreciate what we've got now, because it's very easy to get into the sort of headspace of I'm not doing enough. I'm not, you know. I think there's a fine line between sort of being motivated and then punishing yourself in that sense. So being able to be like, oh, we want to go and do this and we want to wrestle these guys and we want to go to this company and stuff like that. Being able to do that while also being able to appreciate what we're doing now is sort of really important, especially for the more mentally taxing moments of wrestling. But I think in the future there's definitely going to be some matching gear. We've had a lot of conversations about that, and sort of updating our presentation a little bit more. We've got some sort of tag things in the back pocket that we haven't been able to sort of present to people yet. So we're working on the in-ring aspect of things as well, while I think, at least I can sort of speak for myself, where I think maybe the next step is being able to sort of be recognized. You see us on a poster and you're like, that's Act 2. You're not having to, sort of piece it together from other things.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. We've had somebody else reach out to us via you.
Hello.
So somebody's quite curious about your ring music, your theme music that you enter matches to. Do you have a particular bit of ring music that you enter to, regardless of where you're working?
We do. It's Voodoo Child, but it's by Tom Morello and not Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
So if you give that a look up, you'll find it pretty easily. It's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, things like that. So that was another discussion. That was another discussion similar to the name that we had.
Yeah,
where we went through so many things.
It's like when you set a song that you like for your ringtone, but 1,000 times worse though with a theme song. Like any theme that I've used, I now dislike as a song, even if I'm still currently using it. Like we come out to that, and I'm like, I've heard this song so many times, and I only hear it when I'm really stressed and really nervous. I never hear this song in a good situation where I'm like, oh, I can just sit and enjoy this. It's just before you go out for a match, and then you're stressed.
Although I recently watched the new Elvis movie, and there's a 15-20 second snippet of that specific song in there, like the Tom Morello version as well.
Oh, wow.
And it sort of made my heart drop a little bit. Like it's sort of rare that you hear your entrance music in regular situations, and like Jack just said, you're so sort of het up and stressed and on adrenaline and stuff when you do hear it, that like hearing that outside of wrestling sort of made, oh no, okay, I'm fine, I'm not.
You didn't jump up and start looking for the curtain.
I was like, oh no, oh gosh, yeah.
Well, we had that at a wrestling show. I just wrestled Ryan Meyer at Unstoppable, and it was a 2-header show. And I was using Rock and Roll Star at the time.
Nice.
So that song, and I'd maybe been using it for 2 years.
Yeah, it'd been quite a while at that point.
So every match I debuted with that song is like, even when I could hear it in Morrison's now and be like, oh, but we were at a show, and I think the music guy just pressed the wrong song and played it for. So the second show, we were just sat in the crowd watching because we'd already wrestled. We weren't on the second show. We just thought we'd stay and enjoy it. And Jack Barron comes out and does this dead intense, crazy entrance. And we're like, oh my God, love him. Didn't know the card. Excited to see who he's wrestling. And then my theme played. And I'm sat in the audience, just like in a hoodie and shorts. And I was like, oh no, and my brain instantly went to, I've completely forgot that I'm supposed to be wrestling. I need to wrestle now, because in the situation of being at a show, 1,000 times worse. And then Philip Michael came out to it and had a really good match. So
that's that one wrestling nightmare where your music's playing and you're not ready,
and you're
like, it's the dream I'm sure everybody's had. They wake up in a cold sweat, like, oh God.
Guys, speaking of evolving your act, we've had Caitlin via YouTube watching again. Thank you so much for your questions, Caitlin. Have you ever thought about using an Irish gimmick and maybe river dancing together up to the ring for your entrance? It could work. You never know.
No, we haven't.
Caitlin, have you ever seen people with 4 left feet and not 2? Because you would do if you.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. Guys, I want to talk to you about progress now, because what a lot of people may not know is you're part of their ring crew. And I've seen you very regularly at the ballroom, the Electric Ballroom in Camden, London, at pretty much every Progress show since I came back in front of fans in 2022. How did that opportunity first arise? Because that's quite a big deal with one of, if not the biggest promotions in the whole of the country, doing some great things, putting on some amazing shows. But how did the opportunity to be part of their ring crew arise?
So initially part of the sort of Progress management team saw us wrestle. That was our first introduction to us. We were at Catch in Manchester, and it was the 2 of us versus Joe Kessler and Scott Oberman.
Yep.
We went out and had a match. Really enjoyed it. Crowd enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. One of those matches where we really got tested in a good way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we sort of feels like one of those where you definitely learn from it. And, it's going to make us better in the long run. And their management team, they approached Jack initially. I was off doing something else. And then I sort of popped over to see what was going on, and they approached a few of us. We're sort of near the merch table at the time, and they were like, "Lou, really enjoyed what you did. You guys definitely have something going for you. We'd like to invite you to come down, sort of help out and see how things go from there." And this offer was given to a few people, but we were the annoying ones who chased it up. We were the ones where we're like, okay, we're grabbing onto this with both hands, you know what I mean? And sort of through that persistence, I guess, got us into the spot we were in at the time. And since then, we've sort of progressed into a couple of different roles we've been given there. And I get it's sort of the wrestling story you hear on a lot of documentaries and stuff. I think we're both big on going and showing your face and helping out and just sort of being there for people in whatever capacity you need them to be, because that it does pay off, and it's the way we've broken into everywhere we've been. Is sort of going down and helping and showing our face and introducing ourselves to people and just sort of being there and being, getting ourselves on people's minds. And recently enough, we've been lucky enough to do that with Progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to kind of let the cat out of the bag, you guys are actually behind the hard cam, aren't you? You kind of film all the action.
Yes.
At the moment from the balcony. We'll talk about that in a touch. But when you're there, obviously got bird's eye view of all the action. You must be kind of soaking in all of the action like a sponge and taking it all in. And it must be a huge learning experience, especially with Progress having not just the best in the UK, not just the best in Europe, but the best in the world talent in front of you in that ballroom. And kind of an opportunity that you can't buy, that you guys are kind of having every month in the ballroom. What's that like? And starting with Jack, kind of having that world-class talent in front of you and having the opportunity to kind of soak it all in, it must be a crazy learning experience for you both.
Yeah, 100%. It's we just feel so lucky to be doing it. Not only do we get to help out, and we're lucky enough to know a lot of the guys who are on there and have wrestled some of them and just get on with some of them. So being around your mates is always fun anyway, especially in a wrestling sense. So you get to spend the full day with your friends, and then you get to watch some of the best wrestling that's being put on in the world. I'd argue it's, as you say, it's not just the best talent of the UK or anything like that. It's some of the best wrestlers in the world and some of the best matches and all that kind of stuff. So it's brilliant to see, and there's so much that we just watch, and then we're like, oh, we need to take something from this. We need to steal this and change it slightly, or there's and it's not just, oh, this guy did a move. You can really look at things that they do and beats and moments and their timing and their positioning and why they did something and what it meant. And it might not mean something now, but give it 14 minutes and it'll mean something. So it's all that kind of stuff that is being done by the very top of wrestling that you want to cling on to and go, oh, they did this because of this. Whereas it's very easy to sort of tell a story that has no twists and turns. You can tell someone that someone went to the shop and bought milk, but you tell me a Progress match that's like that. There isn't one. It's just it's ever changing. So to watch it and try and understand it, and there's so much that we see there, and we're like, that was great. But if you went, why was that great? We go, I don't know. It was great though. And then maybe in 5 years we'll understand it, or maybe in 10 years you'll go, oh yeah, because of this. So yeah, getting to see the best wrestling, some of the best wrestling in the world, from one of the best seats in the house. We're both very privileged to do that after spending a day just with your mates. So wrestling's the best in that kind of sense.
Yeah. And then sticking with Progress, the tag team division in Progress is just off the charts. Probably I'll go so far as to say probably the best tag team wrestling you're likely to see absolutely anywhere, with the likes of the Smoking Aces, the 0-1-2-1, Sunshine Machine, and that triple threat ladder match on day 2 of Super Strong Style.
Amazing.
My God, one of the best cards I've ever seen from top to bottom that Saturday.
Mhm.
But that match opened the show, pretty much stole the show. Being a tag team yourself, watching that triple threat ladder match must have just blown your mind, and at the same time been so inspiring as well. Ben, give us your thoughts on that triple threat tag team match and the 0-1-2. It was the Sunshine Machine that came away the victors.
Yes.
Very, very popular winners, but that was probably one of the best matches I've ever seen.
Absolutely. It's sort of to ride off what Jack said previously about being able to spend time around guys like that. It's like there's so much to learn there that sort of every corner you turn in that building, there's going to be something for you to learn or something for you to get from the conversations that you're going to be having. Like, I can turn a corner and there's Dean Allmark and Jody Fleisch, like two of the best ever, like realistically, like, and you know, you turn and then you've got like sort of really experienced tag teams like Sunshine Machine and, you know, the Smoking Aces, No 1-2-1, and you get to sort of talk to them and get their perspective on things. Then you can talk to guys like a Jody Fleisch or a Dean Allmark and get their point of view. And there's just so much that, you know, we'd have to be the most absorbent sponges in the world to get it all, because there's so much there for us. And to get to see tag team matches like that, it's one of those moments where we're stood there on the balcony being like, that's where we want to be. That's what we want to be doing. There was a match at Atlas Weekender, and it was Sunshine Machine and the 0-1-2-1, and they didn't get started for 20 minutes because the crowd was so into just them.
Yeah,
it was about 15 minutes of just chanting.
Yeah, just dueling chants.
And you'd think it'd get quieter. It got louder. It got louder. It just kept going.
As it get quieter, it get louder again.
It get louder again, and it was just sort of masterful work. And to see what, like Reese and Rogan explained, as sort of a gimmick match where there's only sort of one on the show, to see it be the most popular thing on that show was incredible.
Yeah, 100%. And to think that you guys are behind that kind of hard cam, or you have been behind that hard cam, and that your kind of actions are responsible for what the viewers at home are going to see on the WWE network, that must be pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's wild. I think we said there's people who have worked their whole life for doing camera work who won't be on a platform as big as the network. So for saying two wrestlers from Stoke can be taught by, and that's an absolute like good job on the Progress team, because they've taught us well enough to be able to do it. It's a very, very nice environment of you can ask questions, and me and him could do something, or we could film the ceiling for a show and someone would come over, and instead of us getting shouted at and sworn at and getting told to never come back, but luckily we haven't done anything that bad. Any sort of teething problems that'd be of having two random wrestlers work a camera for you has only been met with positivity of, oh, well, why don't you do this? And you could try it like this. And I'll make sure you're doing this for me, guys. Does that work? And does this work? And there's never, and I'm not sure how much you would have seen of, show days can be very stressful, and they can be a time where a lot of people mince words, and there can be a sly comment back and forth that isn't meant with any sort of venom, but it can sort of ruin your day when someone's said something and been a bit of a dick for no reason. There's none of that there. Everyone is... There's such a team mentality. Everything's being done well. Everyone's so open and talking to each other. It's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. A few people that have got in touch. David Grant. What's the shortest person you've ever drop kicked? I have no idea what context this is in. Guys, you clearly do. There must be a story behind this one.
He's iggying me on a story. I don't know if I should tell that story. I'll have to tell you the full story after this, John.
I can tell as much of it from my perspective, I guess.
You do that. That's a better idea.
So on a show on my birthday, we're at a show, and I see the promoter walk up with the run sheet, right? And it's a very small locker room for the show, so everyone's working double. So everyone's got a couple of matches, and I see the big scribbled out in one of these matches, right? And the name scribbled out was mine, and I was like,
It was.
So on my birthday, I get pulled out of a tag match. I still got to wrestle that day. Had a really fun match with Joseph Biggs. But instead of me, that Jack Knudsen teamed with, and I suppose the story kind of ends here and answers David Grant's question. He teamed with Little Legs instead.
Love Little Legs. Yes.
So there we go. I think that's.
And I was out there for 50 minutes.
Approximately 50 minutes.
I was just under an hour of Jack Knudsen that crowd got.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, an hour of Jack Knudsen is a bit too long.
To answer sort of the question posed at Jack, I guess Little Legs is the shortest person who's ever drop kicked.
That wasn't a proper drop kick though. I'd maybe say Kai is the shortest person I've ever just like running drop kicked.
That's awesome. As we start to wind down this episode of Wrestling with Johners, I want to throw to both of you. Do you have a bit of a wish list of UK or European or maybe worldwide tag teams that you haven't had the opportunity to, but you'd love to get in there and work at some time in the future? Do you have a little bit of a wish list of teams that you'd love to get in there with?
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
I have a physical one. That we've been lucky enough to be able to tick off quite a few, especially in the last 6 months. But up there, that Lycos Gym,
one of the biggest,
like at top, yes.
Top of that list.
Absolutely. It's one of those where we'd be with the best tag team in the country. We're going to have to step up and prove that we can hang, and it's an intimidating thought, but it's a very motivating thought. And, we want to get to that point. We want to get to the point where we're the top tag team in the country, as sort of, I guess, not humble as that sounds.
Yeah.
That's where we want to be. And being able to test ourselves against guys like Lycos Gym would be huge in order for us to sort of get there and sort of ride the wave into becoming one of the best tag teams in the country. BDSM as well. For similar reasons, Charles Crowley's been ducking me for 3 years. That's true. But as I've really wanted to work with Charles Crowley for the longest time. I think the dynamic of the two of us versus BDSM would be very wet cake-esque.
So that should happen a wet cake.
In a potentially not very wet cake scenario. On the other hand, getting to work with Reese and Rogan again would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Close personal friends, any combination of those 4 guys would be awesome.
The models is a big one.
The models, 100%. The Greedy Souls, the 012 Sunshine Machine. There's so many.
Looking Aces.
It sort of tells you that how deep the tag team pool is, though, because we've had a chance to wrestle incredible tag teams, sort of countless amazing sort of duos, and there's still so many that we haven't.
Next Level,
you know what I mean?
It's forever.
Next Level have been. That one's true. Yes,
that one is true.
If either member of Next Level are watching, fuck you. There's my there's my swear word of the day. So our wish list is very long. We've definitely got personal ones as well. But as far as tag teams go, as lucky as we've been to be able to sort of tick off maybe just under half of the guys on there, there's still so many sort of matches that instill excitement and sort of intrigue in us that we haven't been able to have yet, but hopefully in the near future.
Yeah. And what are some of your favourite matches that you've had as a team? Like I say, you've been performing together as a duo for a little while now. So any matches that you have had must really stand out, quite fresh. But any matches that you've really enjoyed for whatever reason that you want to tell our viewers about?
The match that we had, like Ben mentioned with Reese and Rogan, was it wasn't sort of a crazy big match where we had 40 odd minutes, and we're really getting into that back end. Yeah, that
was very quick.
That was amazing.
That one there.
Yes.
Yeah, that match was so much fun. Again, when we're on the planning side of things, it's again sometimes can be pulling teeth, but two amazing guys who know tag team wrestling so well. They're real guys who, again, they're not two singles guys. And I'm not saying they couldn't wrestle singles. They're both amazing professional wrestlers, but as a unit, they work together so well to be a tag team. They move like a tag team. Everything they do is so clean as a team. But then as well, they're both great wrestlers in the sense of when you're working with one of them, as you say, we can take those massive bumps, but they can give them you perfectly because individually as wrestlers, clean as you like. As a team, clean as you like. So in a match that was just us versus them, no sort of crazy stipulation on it, and it was just one of those matches where you really feel like everything's going the way it should, everything's hitting, crowd are into it, and it's it just feels like everything's firing the way it should be.
Yeah,
absolutely. The match mentioned earlier that sort of got Progress's eyes on us, a catch with Scott Oburn and Joe Kessler, Northwest Strong. It's definitely one of my personal favorites as well, because that was one where we were like, we're really going to get tested here. This is sort of a new echelon of people to work with, and for it to go as well as it did, and for us to really sort of work hard to get into that position, it meant a lot that how well received that match was. And to be fair, this past Saturday, at one more round, we had a triple threat tag match. It was the two of us versus East Mid Breakers, Kyle Kingsley and David Grant, and Battle Squad Awesome, Diamond Dave Andrews and Danny Chase. And to be able to work with those four guys in that capacity and feel like maybe not that we deserve to be there, but we sort of feel like we're really on a run and getting to work with those guys who have worked with us, previously when we were very new, and getting to work with them in a capacity where we're really finding ourselves is really cool.
Yeah,
it's
and
really
the fact
cool
that someone would put us in there with them says
100%
that they think we're of that standard, which is a massive compliment to us when those guys have been tagging for that long.
Absolutely. I bet it's I guess a little bit of a tangent, I'm sorry, but Diamond Dave Andrews doesn't get talked about nearly enough for how valuable he is to wrestling. When you're wrestling him in the ring, whether he's in a presence in the locker room where he's there to give you advice, he's there to just watch, he is someone who definitely deserves his flowers.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the final thing I want to touch on is we know you guys are delivering in the ring, like I say, picking up the Sacrifice Saints of Sacrifice Tag Team Championships, but you guys can deliver behind a microphone as well. And we've had a couple of interview segments, haven't we?
I look very flattering there.
Wow. But you guys can cut a decent promo and really talk down the camera lens. Is that something that you've kind of practiced together or what? Because you've got confidence. And I think recently at Sacrifice Pro, their anniversary show, when you won the titles, you showed a bit more of a heel element, which worked perfectly in that promo segment backstage. But that is another, like I say, for promoters out there, they don't just want you to kind of work in the ring. They want all elements, don't they? And your promo and your interview ability is absolutely spot on backstage. And I can kind of testify to that 110%. But tell us about that. You have a lot of fun and you're very confident, but something that you've developed over time or comes natural. Let us know.
100%. Yeah, Ben's always been sort of more that way inclined. It wasn't until I had to do it a bit more because for maybe your first year and a half, you can coast by on just wrestling. But then people want to see a bit more than your entrance, and they want to see more than that 15 minutes. But getting to do stuff like what we do with yourself and being pushed by Kyle Kingsley to do promos and all this kind of stuff is what's led to me being more comfortable with it. I really enjoy I think for me, promos is sort of a setting and a feeling opposed to the way a lot of people will do it, where it's the same no matter where it is. When we can come and talk to you Of course, we are being characters, and it's very turned up. But I feel like that can be very genuine. I feel like we can talk to you, and there's where we can be quite confident and just chatty, because that's how we are as people. We can come and just chat with you, and I can give you shit and he can give you shit, and then we're all having a laugh, and that's a good circumstance for it. Whereas I find that when me and Ben just have to do promos and be funny, sick, we can just mess around. Whereas I did one for Future where I had to be serious.
Yes.
And like, as far as performing in front of a camera and stuff like that, it's not really a stress to me. I was lucky enough, I went to college for performing arts and that kind of stuff, so it's not a crazy hill that I die on. But I was sort of like, how do I make this feel genuine to me? Because there's a lot of disingenuousness, but is that a word? But when my characters,
it is now.
So when my character, as we were saying about evolving it to sort of tie back to the start, when evolving my character so it's so close to myself, how would I genuinely do that? Would I, as a person, after, say this isn't wrestling, a football game, come and talk to you? Yeah, of course I would. And how would I approach? I'm going to fight someone as a person. I've got to look at it from that angle, and I think that really helped me anyway, of being like, how do I make this feel genuine to me and genuine to my character? And then you're just sort of talking at that point, so it doesn't feel like a promo. It feels more like you're just chatting.
Yeah, and Ben, you're an absolute natural in front of a microphone. Give us your take on it. Something you must be very proud of. Another feather in your cap, being able to cut awesome promos.
Absolutely, I think to be sort of on more of a personal level, to be at this sort of point in my life where you could hand me a microphone and I'm happy to speak into it, is very cool, and something that I think I can reflect on and be proud of. I've always loved a good promo. I've always, me and Jack grew up in the time of your wrestling is going to start with a 25-minute talking segment on TV. Yeah. So that's sort of the wrestling we saw. So, to be able to hopefully hold my own in that sense is really good. It's something I've been doing a lot more recently. Something that similar to what Jack said. Like, it's not anything that's sort of really asked of you in your first sort of year and a half or so. You just kind of go out and get the in-ring experience. But recently we've been able to have segments with guys like yourself. We've been filming sort of more backstage things and talking more. And I think that being able to talk to a camera and sort of, I guess, tying back to what we were saying earlier about characters and things, you're going to teach people just as much in that 30 seconds where you're talking to the camera about you as you are for 15 minutes in the ring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's equally as important in some circumstances, potentially even more so, as what you're doing in the ring, to be able to convey with words how you're feeling and how people should feel about you. And getting the opportunity to do that more has been fantastic.
100%. And you're the only act that I've interviewed twice, and basically I've not been able to finish an interview with you guys. You've kind of nudged me to one side, taken control of the interview. But I don't know whether that's going to be a running theme every time I interview you backstage. I just get nudged to one side. But you guys always deliver in the ring and behind the microphone. But guys, as we come to the end of this episode of Wrestling with Jonathan, it's been an absolute blast speaking to you two for well over an hour now. An opportunity for you to throw out any socials to my listeners, to my viewers, where they can reach out to you, say hi, get to know more about Act 2, and to see some of your work. And to help, I do have a little ticker that runs along the bottom, because there's two of you. There's a lot of addresses there, but please take it away. Where can we say hi on social media?
Absolutely, as seen on the bottom, which is very cool. I didn't know it'd show up for us, so this is something I got a big little pop out of this earlier. But for myself, I am at Sweet Prince BH on Twitter and Instagram. I believe it's the same handle for Facebook as well. I'll be completely honest, don't really use that platform as much. So Twitter and Instagram is probably the best place to find things from me.
Yeah, I tend to not really use my Facebook. I just share things on Facebook. But yeah, if Jack Knudsen 01 on Twitter and Instagram, and then Jack Knudsen wrestler on Facebook.
Brilliant, brilliant. But guys, it's been a blast speaking to you, and I can genuinely say, having seen you wrestle quite a few times and seen you up and down the road, that you are the real deal, and like I say, a real bright spot of the UK scene, and a real up and coming tag team to keep your eye on. If you're not familiar with Act 2, go and check them out at your local shows. Check them out on YouTube. Do you guys have a YouTube or any merch you want to plug while you're here?
We are likely to get merchandise very soon. We initially had a shirt release earlier in the year. There are a couple of little problems with that. So we've sort of reeled it back, and we're going to reapproach, and fingers crossed before the end of the year, you should be able to see. We do currently have individual Big Cartel pages.
Yep.
I've recently sold out of my shirts, so you're more likely to be able to find some of our stuff on your local merch table. We have stickers, we have 8x10s, things of those. But yes, we should be hopefully having a merch release closer towards the end of the year. Something that we both need to agree on. There's a thing about being a team. You can't just be one of us that's happy with it. So so fingers crossed. That's something we'll be able to give people soon.
Look forward to it. But Ben Harland, Jack Knudsen, like I say, the Saints of Sacrifice champions. Thank you so much for being awesome guests, and we'll catch you down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Cheers,
man. Appreciate it.